Back on TYT Sports. One more clip for you guys. I mean, I say one more clip. We're shooting this all on Tuesday, and it gets, sporadically posted on Tuesday, on Wednesday, on Friday, on Saturday. Can't put up all our clips at once. Although some people would really like that. Andre Snellings joins me for one more clip because I mentioned in the first of these series of clips that we've done that Andre is more than just a brilliant basketball mind. He's a football mind. He's an MMA mind. He's also a golf mind. I swear, I've seen RotoWire articles about golf and Andre Snellings. It's a remarkable territory to go into. I thought it was, I didn't know that there was fantasy golf. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, and I'm pushing for fantasy tennis because I'd be all over that.
Fantasy tennis. How about fantasy curling? Fantasy Olympic curling.
I live in Michigan, but you can handle the curling.
How cold is it? What is the temperature by you?
Do you see the turtleneck I'm wearing? Right. Honestly,
did Bob Costas call?
Right. It's a relatively mild winter for Michigan right now. Like the snow is even melting. I barely have any snow in my yard. So I would guess it's probably in the 40s right now, which is shocking. But a couple weeks ago, it was 0. So, You're
going to be so mad. It was 52, so I turned my heat on.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I come to LA once every few months. So yeah. I was in LA when I heard when we were flying back. They said, "Oh, by the way, you're flying back into a winter storm." So imagine transitioning from where you are to 0. With just a single flight.
All of that blood of mine has thinned into the thin, like the layers of my skin. It does not sit at the top anymore. I'm the weakest of them. Even my friends when I was growing up were like, "You hate the cold." I'm like, "That's why I'm moving." All right, so MMA UFC 207 is Friday. Mark your calendars. It is not Saturday because they didn't want to compete with New Year's Eve. I'm sure there's a lot of other entertainment going on that night. You'd be going up against like all of the countdown broadcasts. It makes sense on the UFC's part. T-Mobile Arena, plus I think part of it is T-Mobile Arena is having concerts and stuff like that on New Year's Eve. So it's Friday, December 30th. It's a great card top to bottom with fighters like Cruz and Dillashaw. I know Verdum versus Velasquez has been canceled. That's been a last-minute change. However, we have Ronda Rousey versus Amanda Nunes to really headline the end of 2016's remarkable year for the UFC. And one of the big questions ahead of this fight, believe it or not, will Ronda Rousey win her fans back? And I guess my question for you, Andre, is will it take a convincing Rousey win for the bandwagon to be fully locked and loaded to go into 2017? Or is it just any win or just any amount of Rousey in the octagon that will make fans jump back on?
I think it takes a rousing win and maybe even a couple of them before it gets back to where it was. Because, we've in our other clips today, we've done a lot of joking about, is Aaron Rodgers human? Or, well, is Giannis Antetokounmpo human?
No, none of them are.
Right. But see, there was a sense, I remember going to see Rousey fight Correa, and I went to a BW3, and I was watching it. And I just remember there was this sense that she's not human, that she was so much better than everyone else. Like this was kind of right in the midst of when Serena Williams was going for a Grand Slam and going to break records. And there was a conversation on talk radio like, well, is anybody as dominant in their sport, male or female, as Ronda Rousey is at fighting?
Serena.
Serena was mentioned, but it was like, yeah, but it's not the same.
Cheryl Miller.
They're competitive with her. Yeah, Cheryl Miller, exactly, beating up on Reggie. So I think Rousey, a lot of her, you mentioned the kind of the bandwagon fans, a lot of them kind of tied into that, oh, she's the greatest ever. We're part of that. She's just beyond everybody. And so when she took that knockout, I think, that a lot of them kind of that jarred them. And then you add to that after the knockout, then she kind of disappeared for a year and a half, which I thought she should do. I thought she needed to kind of get her head together and everything. And hopefully she was able to do that. But because of that, she's not untouchable anymore. She's human again. And I think it'll take her really going out there and putting her foot in somebody's chest a couple times before she kind of regains that air of invincibility.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on this. Now, I have another question for you because I love having you on to talk about MMA because usually I talk with, Francis, or sometimes we talk with Robin Black of the Fight Network, which are two contrasting personalities. I've always looked at the MMA, UFC, boxing from a fan's perspective, a sport that I've learned about a lot over the past 5 years, done a couple of open workout-like things to have a little bit better understanding of what the hell was going on, but I do not claim to be a UFC fighter, nor do I claim will I ever step into an octagon at any point in my life, unless I'm getting a Conor McGregor payday. Then I'll get the shit kicked out of me for 15 seconds. I don't care at that point.
Exactly.
But my point being is there's two different types of MMA, I should say UFC fans. You have those who I do think are surface level and follow one fighter, and I think Rousey and McGregor really put that into perspective. Because there's a group that follow McGregor and probably can't tell you the name of one other fighter. And then you have another group of MMA fans, UFC fans, who have been around since UFC 1 and protect the living hell out of the sport. How dare you talk about my beautiful sport that I caught on to before all of you else?
Exactly.
I'm in the middle. I was a boxing fan converted into the UFC because I was so sick of the boxing cards being a bad show, a bad promotion, and the UFC putting on every UFC fight, every fight night is you're getting 2 to 3 to 4 great fights on the card because the matchups are better. And on the point of Rousey, I'm a Nunes fan. Because I'm on her side on this one, right? And I say that because, as Joe Rogan pointed out not long ago, it is a bit bizarre that there is almost no promotion for the champion.
Yeah.
I get it. You understand business. You understand that you got to promote your stars. But one of the major headlines that this article was pointing out, I kind of sent you over from, I think, MMA Fighting or MMA Junkie. I know Dave Doyle was the one who wrote it, so to credit him correctly at least. He was pointing out that one of the major headlines and storylines going into 2017 is going to be how will WME handle promotion of fighters? Because some people claim there's a WWE sense to it, and the press conferences I can see where they're coming from. But at the end of the day, these people are getting into the octagon and putting on an artistic show in the end. So where do you stand in terms of promotion for your big-name fighters? Do you think that fighters are unfairly promoted? Should Nunes get some more respect that she deserves? Because she has a chance to not just beat Miesha Tate, but also add Ronda Rousey to her resume, two of the greatest of their divisions?
Yeah, so you made a good point about there kind of being two different fan bases, and also kind of the what's the best approach, because picking one or two, your McGregors, your Rouseys, and making them the megastar in some ways kind of makes them the face of your product. And the risk to that is what happens when they lose.
Yep.
Because the UFC, more than any other sport, you mentioned boxing, like in boxing, you have, fighters that go undefeated their whole careers.
Yep.
Like if Mayweather fought when he was 45, I still don't think he could lose in boxing because, he's figured out how to not be hit. And I don't think he'll lose that. But in MMA or the UFC, but in MMA, like everyone is going to lose. Like it's almost impossible, just any given night, somebody is going to, everyone could lose on any given day. So
that's the beauty of it to me, is it's so unpredictable.
Exactly. And that makes it a wonderful thing, but that also makes it extremely risky to put your whole brand on one or two people because they will lose. Rousey lost. And, the only reason I think that the brand didn't take a bigger hit is because McGregor was there. And even when he lost, it was to a bigger man and he was able to turn it around. So I think there's a risk in marketing it that way. And as you pointed out, like the champ is hardly getting any press now. If they were smart, to me, they would be giving her press to grow her just in case. Oh, by the way, she is the one that was able to knock out Tate and Rousey, and maybe now she's the next best thing. Right. Especially, with the questions about Cyborg, whether she'll ever be able to come over to the UFC or not with her kind of drug.
That's true. Yeah, they were mentioning that too. Plus, especially in terms of the women's UFC divisions, with Holm fighting in the newly donned featherweight division, 145, I believe it is. Am I making that up? No, that's right.
No, it's 145.
145, and it's in Brooklyn that they're going to have a title fight to create that division. And I think more divisions for the women's is better. There's something very captivating about women's tennis and women's MMA, UFC, where it does, and look, I don't sugarcoat these things. Like, it would be tough to find somebody who's going to tell me that the WNBA is more exciting than the NBA. It's just not. UFC, and boxing never even had this, but UFC and tennis are the ones that hold a candle to it. And not just that, sometimes their light burns a lot brighter because we have a headlining fight between Rousey and Nunes. We have another headlining fight coming up with Holly Holm in a new division. And it's important because I look at it and go, this is a sport that could very much live on. And I can't say it's going to overtake boxing because boxing has been around for 70, 80 years. So the UFC is in what I've said for a while, still its infancy, regardless that they've been through 200 of them. I'm curious what happens with WME, promotion, a new crop of fighters. You know, I always use this example, I guess I'll say this. When Anderson Silva got knocked out by Chris Weidman, they thought, that was it, there goes our biggest star, can we survive? Somebody else always comes along, always, always. Yeah. And it's good.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And you know, just kind of jumping back to what you were saying about the women's versus the men's sports, the UFC is able to capture something similar to tennis in that there's nothing that the men can do that the women can't do.
Yes.
In the WNBA versus the NBA, it's always going to feel watered down, even when you have a couple of women that can dunk, just because they're never going to be able to dunk like Jordan. You know, it's always going to be a difference. But when it comes to to the MMA, you know, I got into MMA because of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You know, when I started.
Yeah, you started taking lessons and doing workouts, right?
Yeah, you know, and one thing that I found, I was able to be competitive early just because I'm really big. You know, I'm big, I'm strong, I'm relatively quick. So that let me be somewhat competitive. But at the same token, there were people half my weight, you know, 150 pounds less than me that could just put me on my back and, you know, twist me into all types of angles.
And you're like, holy shit.
Exactly, you know, just because they had the technique. And so, you know, female MMA is kind of like that. If they've got the technique, if they've got the skill, they can legitimately claim that they could compete with anybody their size in the world, male or female. And that makes things interesting. That keeps it at the peak.
It really does. And there's, look, it's human nature. It's a barbaric sport. I fully understand that. But like I said, nothing gets a crowd like two people fighting, regardless whether it be in an octagon, a ring, or just outside on the street. Seriously, it gets people moving. Don't let the camera fool you. Just like Kevin Durant, Andre is lying about his size. He's 7 foot with handles like that of a point guard. I've seen it. I haven't seen the handles. One day, though. I started not long ago a little bit of Muay Thai classes.
Oh, that's what's up.
Conditioning, man. I got to get back in shape, too. All right, comment below, like, favorite, subscribe. It's around the corner. UFC 209, Jason versus Andre in the octagon. We'll see what happens.
All right, pay-per-view.
Put your money on Andre. All right.
8 figures.
8 figures, baby. We'll make our payday. All right, like, favorite, subscribe. Let us know what you think about Rousey versus Nunes. And Andre, thank you as always. A fun, full show. We have to do this more often. And we'll see you next time.